Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Zoharim Tovim, and Laila Tov. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, and good evening, no matter where you're at. This is Carrie, and I'm going to speak from my heart today in answering some questions. I've been having a fair amount of questions come into the channel, and I really appreciate it, especially because it takes someone to be brave that would be willing to ask some questions that could possibly upset what they've been indoctrinated with, the foundation that they are standing upon. And so I deeply respect people when they ask these questions, and I'm really humbled by it, because it is that place of teachability where we allow ourselves to be taught. And that's always a fearful place, because we have to put forth a level of trust and vulnerability. So I don't take these questions lightly, and I hope that I can do them as much service as I possibly can for those who are earnestly seeking. So the questions that I was asked this morning was that there was some struggling regarding what has been penned in the English narratives. And I totally comprehend this. And so I thought that I would let you hear the questions and then let you know what my response was in replying to these questions. So the first one was, if Yahsua specifically came to show us the way and his purpose was not to die for us, but happened to die in the process, why was he prophesied about in the Old Testament? So my answer to that question was, since we had previously established that there was a lot of corruption that happened within the word through the translators, is it possible that they made these prophecies fit Yahsua and how they wanted for people to see it? I see it as that they purposely wanted to deify him so that he would become untouchable. And in no way did the Catholic Church want the people to know that they had an ability, or they had a way to become just like him. Because if they knew that, they would not be able to have control over the people anymore, since it's raising them up in sovereignty levels and in their consciousness levels. And when these translations were taking place, it was way, way after the fact, timeline-wise, after the walk in when Yahsua was here. And I liken it in war, that in war, the winner always changes history to reflect their narrative as the winner. And the Catholic Church did the same thing, as having conquered in the name of their religion, so they changed history. They changed the prophecy to match their narrative by choosing specific words, because they have an ability within the Hebrew words themselves to do that, but sometimes they would just put in words that were completely not having to do anything with what was written in Hebrew. And we have to remember that people didn't have access to the Bible themselves. And even in times past, they couldn't even read. So, since they didn't have access and they couldn't read, and the Catholic Church told the people that they couldn't interpret it and they needed to leave it up to them, once again as a measure of control over them, they would have to go to the priesthood for the answers. And really, the mass indoctrination happened after the printing press was created. And the history of that, it was created in order to get the Bible out to the people through the narrative that they wanted to present in indoctrination. So, kind of food for thought there. And again, the whole purpose was to put Yahsua out of reach of the people, which is very sad, because he was a man, and he came like a man, and he died like a man, but there was something that transpired within him that he came to teach and to show us, and they wanted to make sure that we wouldn't find it, and making him out of reach for us. The other question was, why was Abraham told to sacrifice his son Isaac as a typology of Yahsua? And my answer to that one was Abraham really asked to sacrifice his son, or was there something else going on? And again, I have to point back to the fact that much of the scriptures were manipulated to get us to see a certain thing as typology of Yahsua. We are actually going to address that whole portion with Abraham and Isaac in a couple of sessions down the road. I have to just edit the video on that, addressing the ram in the thicket. That should bring much more clarity to this question. The other thing that we have to realize that during that time, sacrifices to the gods as a way of appeasing the gods is much older than in the time of Abraham. And you'd actually have to do some deeper digging here, but it was really based upon fear and superstition. And all the cultures around the world had this practice. And it was brought forward into the narratives that we see played out within the English translations of the sacred scriptures. We also have to remember that Moses wrote the second telling of the law through the book of the law. There was a book of the covenant that the people broke, and he had come down from his encounter on top of the mountain when he was literally glowing, and they asked him to be covered because of the supernatural transaction that occurred while he was up there, because Moses was actually raised up in the initiation process in the school of the pharaohs. So he was already instructed in the way of the language. So an activation took place. He was given the tablets of instruction to bring down to the people, because after he left Egypt, he didn't have any of those things to bring to the people, so it was given to him again. And this was supposed to be taught to the people, but they weren't ready for it. So the copy of that went into the Ark of the Covenant, as the wilderness tabernacle was really a type and shadow of our personal becoming. So when Moses wrote the second copy of the law, it was put on the outside of the Ark of the Covenant as a witness against them, and it was his writings. So in a way, Moses did something very similar to what Constantine did, because he brought the sacrifices forward because this is what the people wanted. And remember, they also had asked for a king because they wanted to be like the rest of the world. So one of the things that he realized was they had so much beast ego within them that the really only way for them to toe the line would be through fear, the do this or else kind of thing, because they were very based out. And that is why they could not mature and they could not ascend. As hard as he tried, they were just not ready. They wanted to be like the rest of the world. And in reality, the sacrifices really didn't do anything. Part of the fact that we have trouble with wrapping our mind around this is that we forget that we are eternal beings. And if we lose track of that, then we pretty much get lost in everything else. And it's hard for us to wrap our minds around to say, well, wait a minute, so their sacrifice system didn't mean anything? Well, no, it didn't, because they would just reincarnate over and over again, because the only way out of the loop system is finding and becoming unconditional love. That's why we fell into this, to experience love, so that we could find the unconditional and get out of the matrix, which is our school in divinity. So we must keep it in mind that everything has been about experience of what love is and what love is not. And those animal sacrifices had nothing to do with love, so it would have been filed under the category of what love is not. I'm hoping that makes sense. So again, everything is about experience in every incarnation of growing and maturing so that we could get to this point of time, and especially where Yahsua is trying to take us. So then the next question that I was asked about was, if Yahshua's sole purpose was to show us the way, then why was he not affected by the beast ego like the rest of us? These are all really, really good questions. So the first point that I wanted to make about Yahsua is that the Bible, again, in the English translation, has presented the way that they want to portray his life. So through their writings, we would only see what they want to present. We have to keep that in mind. And second, we are all born with the ego, but the beast ego is birthed and comes into being without proper rearing. The ego is tamed through the spiritual teachings and practices that are real and actually do something through spiritual activation. And I believe that Yahsua had good parenting. And it would be an assumption on my part, to a degree, that Mary and Joseph were extremely spiritual. They weren't religious. And because the way they reared him in the way he should go, the ego didn't become a beast. He was taught the way in Qumran after the age of 12. He studied with John in the Qumran community, the so-called missing years. So he found out what the way was through the language, which then was able to help him cast out the ego so that it never became the beast like it had with so many other people, especially within the religious systems, the beast religion systems of the world bent on control and manipulation because of their drunkenness on power. So I hope that helped. I hope these questions and answers are some of those things that maybe some of you have been thinking about and you've been trying to reconcile them yourself. Again, I appreciate these difficult questions, and I try to provide answers for all of you so that we can continue chomping through these things as we shed light on the indoctrinations that have held us back from the process of becoming the manifested sons and daughters that all of creation has been waiting for. And we now have the energy supporting us in this transformation, hence why the language is revealing itself today, because of being in the age of light and love. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.